like to introduce Pushpa Kaura this morning, who will introduce our presentation for today.
Good morning, and thank you for coming today. This is the third lecture in the series on alternative or integrative medicine. And today's talk, is on the brain and the science of meditation. Our speaker today is Allen Ritz. He's an emeritus faculty from the Department of Neuroscience, College of Medicine here. He's co-author of the textbook Medical Neuroscience. He was a very popular teacher, I know that. He also is director of a campus-wide Center for Spirituality and Health. He was inducted into the College of Medicine Society of Teaching Scholars in 2006. And the undergraduate honors students have named Lou the 2018 Honors Professor of the Year. Lou is a very experienced meditator. He's been doing it for 50 years. And he has made 5 trips to India to study meditation. I grew up in India and never learned how to do it. In the past 25 years, he has given talks throughout the United States, Canada, and parts of China. And in 2019, he gave a talk for the Science of Spirituality Meditation Club at the United Nations in New York. So we are very fortunate that he's agreed to give this talk on brain and the science of meditation. Lou?
Thank you, Pushpa. It's my pleasure to be here today and talk about something near and dear to me, which is meditation. Okay, so what are we going to talk about today? We're going to give an overview of meditation and a cute quote, "It's not what you think," because hopefully when we're meditating, we're limiting our thoughts. We'll talk about the benefits of mindfulness in particular, which is one type of meditation. Then I'll get more into the brain, what's going on, what we know, the little bit that we know about meditation in the brain. We'll talk about that. And then a topic that's become popular to talk about in the last couple of years is mind wandering. I like to start my talks with a quote from Lao Tzu, a Chinese philosopher from 2,500 years ago. "If you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. If you're at peace, you're living in the present." One of the things that's important in meditation is that we learn to live in the present moment and not be distracted by the past or the future. The past is gone, future, who knows what's going to happen. So Lao Tzu is encouraging us to live in the present moment. So I have another quote, and it's a 2-part quote, and I'm going to start with the first part. "The ultimate aim of spiritual practices is awakening. That is to know our true self and our relationship to the sacred." This is a quote from Roger Walsh, who is a psychiatrist and a scientist at UC Irvine. And it's from his book, Essential Spirituality, a book that I use in my undergraduate honors class. "The ultimate aim of spiritual practices is awakening. That is to know our true self and our relationship to the sacred." However, spiritual practices also offer numerous other gifts along the way. The heart begins to open, fear and anger melt, greed and jealousy dwindle, happiness and joy grow, love flowers, peace replaces agitation, concerns for others blossoms, wisdom matures, and both psychological and physical health improve. So he's implying with spirituality, with meditation, there's a lot of gifts along the way, a lot of ways that they can help our health. One of my favorite words to teach medical students is salutogenesis. Now, maybe you've heard of the word pathogenesis, which is diseases, the disease processes that make us sick. Salutogenesis is the opposite of that. What are the factors that promote our health? And we'll talk about some of these today. Not going to talk about all of them, but exercise is certainly important. Non-smoking, that's a no-brainer. A plant-based diet. I've been a vegetarian for 50 years, and I like to say that I'm a vegan between Italian meals, but every once in a while I have to have pizza or some other form of Italian meal with cheese in it. But anyway, meditation, which is what this talk is about, contemplation, I think they help us a lot. Living in the moment, not reacting. And that's a quote that I'm going to talk, or that's a comment on something I'm going to talk about here in a moment. And then the quote is, "A mind undisturbed marks a prominent goal of all great spiritual traditions." Can we go through life with a quiet mind? That is an enormous challenge, and that's what meditation is here to help us with. So from the National Institutes of Health, a survey they did in 2017, this is the most recent one I could find, is that about 14% of Americans use meditation. It depends on your population, who you're talking to, but I think more and more we hear about people meditating 15 minutes a day, half hour a day, whatever. And then they go on to give some definitions. Meditation refers to a group of techniques. So there's a lot of different forms of meditation, and the type that you use depends on your goals. Most of these have started from Eastern traditions, but certainly Western traditions have meditation, whether we're talking about Catholicism or Judaism or whatever. In meditation, a person learns to focus his attention. Most of the time, our attention can be scattered, and suspend the stream of thoughts. This practice is believed to result in physical relaxation, mental calmness, and psychological balance. These are the health benefits that are sort of side effects of wonderful side effects of our meditation. Now, mindfulness has been championed by Jon Kabat-Zinn over the last 25 years or so, and he defines mindfulness as paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the moment, and non-judgmentally. Putting all of our attention into something, not having scattered attention when we interact with people or we do some chores. Now, a meditation type of meditation that's come out of it is called mindfulness meditation. Taking this a step further, a secular, non-esoteric, contemplative practice, cultivating focus, attention, and self-awareness. He really borrowed, mindfulness really came from Buddhism, and for better or for worse, and not everybody likes this, but they stripped out a lot of the religious connotation of the Buddhist practice and made it, more of a secular form of meditation. And then he has gone on to offer 2-week programs that I know a lot of my friends in counseling at the University of Florida have gone through this mindfulness-based stress reduction program. So there's a revolution going on in mindfulness. You've probably heard the word mindfulness a lot. And this was this is about 7 years ago in a Time magazine article. Now, I want to talk about this thing called stress. And if you know some people who are really calm, you got a grandmother or a friend or an aunt or whatever, calm people react differently to challenging situations. What I say is they have learned to not react. The interesting thing about stress is that there's 2 aspects of stress. First of all, there's life challenges. We all know what life challenges are. We've all gone through many life challenges. And the second aspect is our response to life challenges. Well, as you probably have come to realize, the challenges never go away for one reason or another. What is optional here is our response. We can either respond in a stressed out manner or we can not. We can learn to not react. And that's what meditation can help us with. In fact, I view stress as a psychological reflex. And if we can decouple the stimulus from the response, the stimulus being life challenges and the response being our reaction, if we can decouple that, we can calm down, learn to not react, have a quiet response, have more of a measured response to the stress. And this is the little diagram at the bottom is showing that with meditation, with mindfulness practices and other meditation techniques, we can put some space between the stimulus and the response, the life challenge and our reaction to life's challenges. This is a slide I use with medical students. Okay, so I know the audience is not medical students, but you could use, this could be for lawyers, it could be for counselors, it could be for financial advisors. Anytime you're working with patients or individuals, it's good to self-reflect and know your own limitations. Mindfulness is important for stress reduction for students. It'll help studying. It helps paying attention to it helps a medical student pay attention to their patients. It helps medical students have more of ability to listen to their patients, and perhaps underappreciated the fact that patient safety increases when the physician is mindful or attentive. Attentive physicians are less likely to make a mistake. So this is something promoting meditation to the medical students, but again, it's anytime you're interacting with other people, you can find it useful. All right, I'm going to move on to talk a little bit about some brain research here. This is a magazine I picked up in 2008 around election time, and I was interested in it because the year 1968 was on the cover. This is a year that some historians think it's the most important year in American history since World War II. It's a year where we had a very unpopular president. It's a year where two of the rising stars in America were, well, they lost their lives, Dr. Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. It's also the year I graduated from high school. So that's really why I was interested in it. But I found something interesting in the article, in the magazine. There was an article called What the Beatles Gave Science. And 1968, the Beatles were, I hope you know who the Beatles are, but in 1968, the Beatles were at their height of popularity. They were producing great music. They were wealthy. They had the adoration of millions of people, but they weren't happy. There was something missing in their lives. And so they decided to go to India, to an ashram in northern India, to learn transcendental meditation. They thought it would help them out. And they planned to go for 3 months. I'm not sure any of them stayed quite that long, but they were with their teacher who's in the middle. So from left to right, as far as the Beatles go, we've got Paul, the late John, the late George, and then Ringo. What was interesting is a lot of people saw that the Beatles were meditating. So a lot of people said, this must be helpful. This must be cool. I want to try meditation too. And a guy named Robert Keith Wallace, a graduate student at UCLA, noticed this and said, well, I'm a scientist. I'm studying to be a scientist. I want to know what's going on with meditation. So he started studying the physiology of meditation, of the transcendental meditation that the Beatles were involved in. And they determined that the meditation produced what they call the hypometabolic state, or as Herb Benson, a co-author on the paper, he's a cardiologist at Harvard, he called it the relaxation response. In any case, the meditation really relaxed people. That was their early observation. Now I'm sure there was physiology studies before this, but this was published in Scientific American and really caught my eye. I was just beginning to get interested in meditation in 1972, so I found this article really interesting. This is a picture from that article, and this shows a guy meditating, and at the same time, they're they're measuring his heart rate, his galvanic skin response, which is a measure of stress, his respiration rate, and they were measuring blood gases. And all of this seemed to indicate that during meditation, the subjects are greatly relaxed. They have their metabolism really shuts down, even more so than when you're sleeping or just sitting here resting. And they published something that looks like this, and I'm not going to go through this, but basically at the top of this slide, let's see, if you look up here, we have transcendental meditation, and somehow it's affecting the central nervous system to produce this relaxation response. Apparently, the sympathetic portion of the autonomic nervous system is diminished. The parasympathetic, rest and digest. Well, the sympathetic is the fight or flight. The parasympathetic division, the rest and digest, may be activated. But the really interesting thing is, the question is, how does this mental process of meditation affect our brain? That was the early question from these techniques. More recently, much has been published about Zen in the brain. And this is a friend of mine, Jim Austin. Jim has wintered in Gainesville for a number of years. He's from Columbia, Missouri. He's the former chair of neurology at the University of Colorado. And when he was active as a scientist and clinician, he did a sabbatical in Japan and wandered into a Zen monastery and realized that Zen involved something totally different than he was used to. And he started writing about it. Jim is actually a veteran of World War II and the Korean War, and I think he's 96 or 98, and I hope he returns to Gainesville this winter. So, more recently, the words science and meditation have begun to show up in magazine articles. So this is a Time magazine with Heather Graham meditating, the science of meditation. And this is a Scientific American article. And again, the science of meditation. So people are beginning to couple science and meditation together. In my mind, given some validity to meditation. So we can ask the questions, there's like three levels of question we could ask about meditations, and approach these questions in a scientific fashion. What's happening in the body and brain during meditation? And I've already indicated this relaxation response. Are there long-term effects? How long does this relaxation take hold? The second is a very interesting question. Can meditation be used as a therapeutic intervention for pain, for depression, for addiction, for neurodegeneration, for cognitive decline? These are things that are just now people are beginning to look at. And then how do we study subjectively the effects of meditation? What does it do to our inner landscape? Most people many people go through life and they're just totally unaware of what's going on inside of them. And they go to meditate and they can't meditate because all this stuff is going on. And I said, that's a great meditation. Meditation is a mirror to our inner landscape, and it's very useful. Some years ago, maybe about 15 years ago, a group of scientists met with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala, India, and they gave a series of lectures on the brain and neuroplasticity. And out of it, this book came, Train Your Mind, Change Your Brain, which is an excellent book, an excellent primer on neuroplasticity. And in the book, in the beginning, the Dalai Lama asked a simple question, and I actually posed this question earlier. Can the mind change the brain? Can meditation, presumably working through our minds, at least in part, can that change the brain? And it's been suggested, and you can think about this, the mind could be software and the brain the hardware. So certainly in computer systems, software can turn on circuits and turn off circuits. The software can affect the hardware. That's just a suggestion. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama has shown an interest in studying the brain, and most of this work has gone on at the University of Wisconsin. Shown here in brown is Dr. Richard Davidson, probably the foremost meditation researcher in the country, if not the world. And he has been investigating what's going on in the minds of monks and regular people. And this is Matthieu Ricard, who is a Buddhist monk, but he also has a PhD in biology, and he's been subject to some of these experiments. And so here we are putting monks in an MRI tube and imaging their brain, either during meditation or after meditation, to get an idea of what's going on. Here's Richard Davidson putting a halo of electrodes, a bonnet of electrodes on the same monk, and looking at the electrical activity of the brain during meditation or after meditation. So we're beginning to look at what's going on in the brain, beginning to get a little bit of an idea what's going on in the brain during meditation. And I'm talking very generally about meditation. Now, scientists have known, there's a couple points here. Scientists have known, neurologists have known for a long time that our left frontal lobes, which are over here, just in each of us, it's important for a positive affect, for us having a positive affect, a positive outlook, an upbeat personality. And they know that from stroke data. People who have strokes in the left frontal lobes have problems with their affect. Well, during meditation, the left frontal lobes are activated. There's more activity, there's more blood flow, and this activation continues after the meditation session is over. So presumably meditation is helping us have a positive affect, have a stronger emotions, positive emotions. Some of this work has dribbled over into psychiatry, where people are using magnetic stimulation, not meditation, but using magnetic stimulation to stimulate the left frontal lobes for people with intractable depression, severe depression that medicine doesn't help. The last point is, again, the frontal lobes being activated during meditation. They have connections with our emotional centers in the limbic system. These connections seem to be activated with meditation, and this quiets the limbic system, so our anxieties are decreased with meditation. So our emotions our negative emotions are dampened down and our positive emotions seem to be elevated with meditation. So we've seen that meditation can relax the body, it can affect our emotions. It can also affect pain, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but this was a study in which people were given an electrical shock to the lateral side of their calf, the lateral side of their leg, and they were asked to rate the shock as far as how intense it was and actually how nasty the shock is. And with several different techniques, it didn't seem to affect the shock, but with meditation, learning mindfulness meditation, being trained in mindfulness meditation, reduced the intensity and the unpleasantness of the electrical shock, with the point being that it's beginning to suggest that maybe we can get better pain control with meditation techniques. Now, this is a complicated slide, but it's also the most interesting point, I think, of my whole talk, or one of the most interesting things. So we've talked about the body, we've talked about the emotions. What's going on in the mind? So I want to tell you about an interesting experiment that was done 10 or 15 years ago. Some scientists were interested in studying attention networks in the brain, the parts of the brain that were important for attention, paying attention to a picture, to a book, paying attention when we're driving, doesn't matter what it was, what the task is, we use this attention network. And so they had people in an MRI tubes and they were imaging their brain and they had them on this attention task for 10 minutes. And then there was a 10-minute rest period. And then they would be on the task for 10 minutes and then there was a 10-minute rest period. So when they looked at the data, they found out that, yes, the attention network was stimulated in the brain. But they were really puzzled because when they looked at the data at rest, now the subjects didn't know the brains were still being imaged, or they weren't told to do anything in particular. As it turns out, a whole different network appeared when the subjects were at rest. So the attention network is activated when you're paying attention to something, but when you're at rest, a different network appeared. And this different network, well, the scientists were puzzled. What's going on here? What's happening? So they asked a simple question: what were you doing during the rest period? And collectively, the subjects said, our minds were wandering. We were thinking about the past. We were thinking about the future. We were, we were daydreaming. Lao Tzu warned us about this 2,500 years ago, by the way, just to remind you. So this mind-wandering network has become known as the default mode network. You've got an attention network in the brain that is activated when we're paying attention to something, and you've got this default mode network that's activated when we're ruminating, we're thinking about ourselves, we're thinking about our problems, we're thinking about the past, we're thinking about the future. So this mind wandering, self-centered thoughts about the past or the future, some people call it the me center. Another group of scientists have studied mind wandering, and without going through the details, they asked people, a whole lot of people, a lot of subjects were involved in this, and they ask them, when their minds are wandering, are you happy or unhappy? And it turns out a wandering mind is an unhappy mind. And I've had students question that. I don't believe that. I said, just do the question, or do the experiment yourself, or ask yourself, when you find yourself mind wandering, most of the time you'll find out you're unhappy. Spending time in the past, spending time in the future, worrying about the future, worrying about the past leads to an unhappy mind. So the question I like to ask is, how can we minimize the role of this default mode network? I mean, there are people coming out now with thinking that this default mode network is at the heart of all mental illnesses, at least mental illnesses where there is repetitive thoughts and excessive rumination about ourselves. Well, this is a funny picture because it came from a Wall Street Journal article. That's where I first heard about the research, but excuse me, I went back and read the original research after seeing this Wall Street Journal article, and it's entitled "Say It Again, a Mantra Really Works." And scientists have found one way to limit the activity of the default mode network is a mantra. Now, a mantra is a set of words that you repeat silently. In most cases, you repeat silently as a form of meditation. And by focusing on the word you're repeating, whether it's serenity, 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 when you're repeating this in your mind, it has the ability to quiet the default mode network and will make us feel better, help us feel better, and get off the focus on our issues. So this is a simplistic view. And the mind, our mind is a big challenge. It's a great tool, but it's also a big challenge. A psychiatrist, a new psychiatrist faculty came into my office about 15 years ago, and he said, he's new to Gainesville, and he said to me, I'm trying to find somebody with a profoundly quiet mind. A profoundly quiet mind. We all hope to have that, such that we can use our mind when we need to use it, but otherwise it's not bothering us. Well, that's a challenge, but the mind can be changed. We can change our thoughts. We can change our brain circuitry. With that, we can change our behaviors, and hopefully we will have improvement in our lives in a number of different levels, a number of different considerations. So with a nod to Alex Gray, this picture on the right is showing the body, mind, and spirit, and they're interconnected. And I tried to do this sort of in a poetic way, but talk about meditation and the ecology of the brain and mind. Meditation helps us clean up our internal landscape. It removes polluting emotions. It can help us get rid of negative or persistent thought patterns that are caused by the default mode network. It helps us conserve our precious resources. The most precious resource is our ability to focus our attention. And finally, it can restore harmony to our inner environment. Now, that's the end of my talk, but I've added one more slide because I have a story to tell you. This is my wife, Jody, and me at the base of Mount Rainier a few years back. So in 1984, I was living in Morgantown, West Virginia. I had made plans to go to India. It would have been my first trip to India. And I was excited, but I was pretty nervous about it. Somehow I got tickets to Delhi, and somehow I got a visa, without the internet. I can't even remember how I did it. I got cholera inoculations, which were mandated at the time, and I got sick from cholera each time the inoculations. Each time I got a shot, I got sick. Anyway, I was going to go at the end of December in 1984. Unfortunately, there was a lot of unrest in northern India at that time. Earlier in the fall, there was an industrial accident that killed a lot of people. And then in early December of 1984, Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her Sikh bodyguards. And I was going to a meditation center, an ashram in Delhi, and there was just a lot of unrest. So on on Friday night, December 7th, I got a call from the ashram, actually somebody who lives in this country who was associated with it, saying that Westerners were asked to not come to India at this time. So my trip was canceled and I was heartbroken. The next night, I went to a departmental Christmas party, December 8th, and I had a date with me, a woman who was on the faculty. She was actually the chair of a department at West Virginia University. And we went to the departmental Christmas party, and we're sitting down next to each other. And we were at a table, and my chair was sitting across from me. And my chair said, "Lou, why are you interested in meditation?" Excuse me. He said, "Why are you interested in going to India?" And I said, "I'm interested in meditation." Well, my date got up and she kind of, I hate to say it, but she was kind of snarky. She said, "I've heard this story before," and she walked away. Simultaneously, another woman came around the other side of me, sat down where my date was, and said, "I'm interested in meditation." And the woman in this picture was the woman who sat down beside me and said she was interested in meditation. So we've been together for almost 37 years. So the point is, you never know what's going to happen if you're in a group and you say you're interested in meditation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lou. That was great, wonderful. Tying up the meditation procedure along with science and the brain. That's wonderful. We'll take questions from Oak Room. Are there any questions here? I'll go around. Yeah.
If I could ask, when you meditate, do you try to pace your breathing or do deep breathing? I've meditated on and off for years, and sometimes I find that I get caught up in not breathing well. Should I just let that go?
Lou?
Well, I can't tell you exactly what to do. Okay. So I'm really not here to tell you exactly what to do, but I will say I don't pay attention to my breathing at all. My goal is to quiet the mind. So I do a mantra-based meditation where I slowly repeat some words. You can use words like serenity or peace or God or love, or you can use the names of the Lord that you're familiar with from your own traditions, but that's what I do. So I'm not paying attention to my body. I'm trying to ignore my body, and I'm ignoring my breathing, and I'm trying to quiet my mind.
Okay, this may be very naive, but if you don't think about the past, how do you learn from your mistakes?
Well, it's dwelling on the past that's the real issue. Certainly and I should have emphasized this, and I'm telling this to students all the time, we need to process the past to learn from our mistakes, but then let it go once you've processed it. It's the same with the future. You plan for a trip, and then you let it go, and you're back in the present moment. So there are times when you have to learn from the past or plan for the future, but it's the dwelling on it. It's the rumination and the grinding and the churning on these things, whether it be the past or the future, that cause a lot of problems. And certainly at the University of Florida, I've seen many, many students, unfortunately, who are either depressed or they're anxious. And just like Lao Tzu said, they're spending too much time in the past or too much time in the future.
Lou, we have some questions here from Zoom audience. One of the chat questions says, any studies of group meditation?
No, I can't say that I know of any. I'm sorry. But certainly, there are events where many people might be chanting together, or maybe they're saying they're in prayer together, silent prayer together, but I don't know of any studies of that.
Okay, Shirley, go ahead.
I'm wondering, how does biofeedback fit with meditation?
Well, in a sense, you're doing was she here or?
On Zoom.
I'm
Oh.
on Zoom.
Okay.
You want to come back to the camera here?
Okay, so in essence, you're doing your own biofeedback by learning to relax your body, learning to relax your mind. And so that is a form of biofeedback. But otherwise, you can get more sophisticated and you can put electrodes on various parts of the body, but it's not really necessary. We can learn to relax on our own without that, without at least all the technology.
Okay, and there's another chat question that says, is there an optimum time of day to meditate?
The best time of the day to meditate is the time that you won't fall asleep during meditation. I find that I'm most relaxed as soon as I wake up in the morning. You know, I might wash my face and then I'll meditate for an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours right away. I'm not going to fall asleep. If I try 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm worthless with meditating at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That's really, for me, that's a downtime. But yeah, it's any time that you can be most relaxed, and you want to pick a time where you're not going to be interrupted, where you're not going to get any phone calls, your family members are not going to need you. You got to be in a quiet place. It's nice to have your own space where you're going to be left alone. You're not going to be disturbed.
Thank you. Karen Mary, go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering what you know about the Shambhala Meditation Center, and do you think it's useful to join a meditation center like that?
You mean the one in Gainesville?
Yes.
I don't remember. I've been there once, I think. And I think joining a group of people where there's a teacher, I think is a good place to start. So I can't say anything specific one way or the other about that center, but in general, you got to go. It's good to have a teacher at the beginning and go with a meditation technique that you resonate with. And again, the word meditation is almost like the word exercise. There's lots of different exercises and you have to figure out which one works for you. And it's the same with meditation.
Thank you. Rick Gold, go ahead.
Thanks so much. I was involved with transcendental meditation in the 70s. And at that time, the Maharishi was setting up the Maharishi University in the US. And I was wondering if there were any scientific research that came out of that.
I think they are still doing research on meditation. The research that I initially showed, the Scientific American article, that was from Transcendental Meditation. I don't know that it was done at UCLA, but I think it was in connection with that Maharishi University. I think they're continuing to do research on the effects of mantra-based meditation techniques, but I'm not familiar with any of the details right now, but I think they're still in business.
Lou, I have a question. You showed that slide about the brain activation when the mind is wandering.
Yeah.
Have they looked at it during meditation to see whether those particular areas are quiet?
Yeah, they found that meditation will deactivate the default mode network. Mantra-based meditation will quiet the default mode network, and the activity is greatly reduced during meditation. With the hope is that when you're not meditating, it remains relatively low.
Right, right. And one other question I have to follow up really is that, is there any correlation or negative correlation between meditation and neurodegenerative diseases?
Well, I had suggested that. I'm hoping in the future, people look at that meditation could possibly be could possibly be a therapeutic intervention, but I don't know of any studies exactly dealing with that.
Thank you.
I
There's one-
imagine that would be kind of hard to do, but still somebody's going to get interested. It's
Yeah, it
obvious.
sounds,
I think it's
obvious thing to
It's-
study.
Right, and I think it's hugely important.
One other comment here in chat says, I find Tai Chi brings me to a meditative state. Any comment?
Well, I'm not really that familiar with Tai Chi, but if it relaxes the body and calms the mind, I'm all for it. And I can see how it would do it.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments in the Oak Room? Anything on Zoom? Okay. Thank you, Lou, so much. I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad you came
Thank
and
you.
gave this talk. I've been meaning to learn all about meditation. Next week, our speaker is on a subject that also ties science with alternative medicine, and he will be talking on his research on a compound that is being developed that is, I guess, used to treat opioid addiction, but he's looking at the science of the procedure. So it should be an interesting talk. Thank you all for
Wait a
coming.
minute, wait a minute. I forgot to ask an important question. A couple of people hinted at this, but is there any meditation going on here at the Oak Hammock? Is there any meditation teachers who come in or?
No, not that I know of. Is there? Anybody know that? No, I don't think so. We have Tai Chi. We have
Okay.
Tai Chi, but not
Okay.
meditation.
Okay.
Thank you.
What do you recommend?
Well, I'm not going to make a recommendation, but I would think that it would be easy to get some of these local, somebody mentioned Shambhala, and to get them to come over and lead meditation if there's interest in it.
Can you tell us a little bit about that Center for Spirituality? What's
So some years ago, several faculty came together and said, we really need to try to uplift the University of Florida, the students, the faculty, the staff. And we thought about offering classes in spirituality. And Alan Nimes was part of this. I know Alan gave a talk here last week, was it, or 2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago?
Shai Eisenberg, who was at that time chair of the Department of Religion. And in about 1989, the three of us, including myself, we went to a local benefactor, Mickey Singer. You probably have heard that of him. And we asked him to financially support us so we can offer classes for the university students and also offer programs. And Mickey has been very generous, very gracious, and he's been supporting us for 22 years now. And so Alan was actually the first director of the center, and then it passed on to me in 2007. And so we are still offering some classes. Unfortunately, a number of our faculty have retired and aren't teaching anymore. So we teach about 7 classes a year, classes in mindful living, classes in spirituality and creativity for nursing students. I teach in the honors program. I teach a class called Spirituality and Health. So we're still teaching classes. We used to have a lot of speakers, but again, because our numbers of the center have dwindled, the number of faculty involved, our focus now is just offering classes for the UF students.
So there's no community involvement in that?
No, we're just too small and too limited to do anything beyond teaching the students.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks again.